Now, Ryan Garcia fought a couple months ago, I think it was, against Emmanuel Tago, and he beat him via unanimous decision. And he's also looking to fight Javier Fortuna very, very soon. However, what I find interesting about Ryan Garcia is people are very critical about him, and they're suggesting that he doesn't have any real boxing ability. However, I disagree. Now, I recognize that Ryan Garcia has called out guys like Gervonta Tank Davis, Devin Haney, Manny Pacquiao, Jojo Diaz, Jorge Linares, and he hasn't fought any of them. So I guess you could call him a clout chaser. But even though he may be a clout chaser, that doesn't detract from his actual boxing ability. I think this is a guy who's got very, very good things, and he's got one glaring weakness that I want to talk about. When we look at Ryan Garcia's strengths, Ryan Garcia is one of the most heavy-handed in the lightweight division. I wouldn't say he's as big as puncher as Tank is. However, he's definitely one of the bigger punchers in the lightweight division. For me, he's a much bigger puncher than Rolly Romero. He can also hurt you to the body, not just the head. If we look at how he knocked down Luke Campbell, it was a body shot, not to the head. Luke Campbell thought that Ryan Garcia was going to the head, but Ryan Garcia changed the direction of his punch and came down to the body and just took the wind out of Luke Campbell. This shows a level of sophistication that could probably help him against the higher level opponents, where they suspect Ryan's going to throw one punch but throws his punch in a completely different angle. And those minute things, I'm telling you, that could be the difference between going the distance and getting a stoppage when you're fighting a Devin Haney or Gervonta Tank Davis or one of the other top guys. As well as being heavy-handed, he is also very fast. This is someone who's very athletically gifted. He's probably the quickest out of the top guys in the lightweight division. For me, he's quicker than Gervonta Davis, and he was probably quicker than Devin Haney as well. Now, obviously, we know that speed isn't the one and only important attribute in boxing. In fact, timing is much more important than speed. However, speed can be useful. We'd often see when Amir Khan used to fight that he used to start fights quick, and he was most dangerous from the beginning of the fight because opponents found it very difficult to acclimatize to his hand speed. So that's definitely another thing, another aspect of Ryan Garcia's game that I think is very good and that I like. He's also got pretty good fundamentals. He's got a decent jab, a decent right hand. He can really throw all types of shots pretty good. Now, I don't think his punches are as well varied and as well selected as someone like a Devin Haney, but I do think they are very good. So say what you want about Ryan Garcia, he definitely is a talented lightweight and can cause a Devin Haney or Gervonta Tank Davis or a Lomachenko or a George Kambosos some serious problems. However, the glaring weakness for Ryan Garcia is his defense. This guy has incredibly rudimentary defense. I mean, his defense is extremely basic. He's very easy, in my opinion, to figure out if you're even a somewhat intelligent fighter. He comes in with the high guards and he doesn't present any other defensive stances, positions, or maneuvers. And now, I don't like it when fighters constantly fight with the same type of guard because your opponent can figure you out and break down that guard sooner rather than later. For example, Caleb Plant, when he fought Canelo Alvarez, was just presenting Canelo Alvarez the Philly shell. And even though he did pull it off and, he was able to pull counter Canelo and show that he was pretty slick and he could be a decent defensive fighter, it was just the same opening. Someone who mastered the Philly shell, Floyd Mayweather, he didn't always just present the Philly shell as his form of defense. He had good footwork. He always kept his opponent behind the jab. He understood distance brilliantly. And he also presented the high guard and at occasions, very few occasions, would fight down with his hands a little lower when he got a bit confident. And he wouldn't always just jab and move around. He would even walk down his opponents. It's incredible when you think that Mayweather, during the fight against Canelo, he walked Canelo Alvarez down, who was, 15, 20 pounds heavier. Now, obviously, I don't want to get sidetracked and talk about Floyd Mayweather and how great of a fighter he was, but I just want to mention how even he had many different defensive openings, not just the Philly shell. He also used the high guard. For me, Ryan Garcia can't just use the Philly shell the entire fight. Sometimes you can have your hands a little lower, though that is very, very dangerous. You leave your chin open. But yeah, don't just overuse the high guard. Use some other forms of defense that could be conducive to success. Because once your opponent gets around the high guard, and at the elite level, your opponents will get around the high guard. A Devin Haney, a Lomachenko, these guys will figure you out if you just come with the high guard. So you've got to mix it up and be intelligent with it. Don't be predictable. His footwork could also use a lot of improving. He doesn't get out of the way of shots. His head movement and upper body movement, it's too stiff. For a lightweight, Ryan Garcia isn't necessarily the most fluid fighter. He is very robotic. He is very upright. Sometimes I feel like he's a lightweight Frank Bruno in that aspect. He's very, very upright. He needs to be a little bit more fluid. He definitely needs to work on that upper body movement. Similar to someone like obviously not as bad as heavyweights. Lightweights are way more fluid. They can move around the ring way better than heavyweights, but also kind of a Daniel Dubois situation where Dubois is very upright. I see the same issue with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia, in my opinion, just really needs to work on his upper body movement and being more fluid so he can roll with punches and use his reflexes in order to get out of punches, deflect punches, block punches, and so on and so forth. When your head is still and you're fighting a puncher, that's where you're most vulnerable. If we look at someone like a Deontay Wilder, for example, when he knocked out Luis Ortiz, Wilder was losing many of the rounds in the second fight against Luis Ortiz, but Luis Ortiz stood up straight, upright, he was stiff, he didn't have a lot of upper body movement for a few seconds, and bang, Wilder caught him out. I believe a Gervonta Tank Davis could do the exact same thing if Ryan Garcia is just very upright and he's not fluid. So that's something that is definitely an area of concern and he needs to work on. Now, some might suggest Ryan Garcia has a glass chin. However, I'm not so sure about that. I feel like boxing fans are often too quick to say that this fighter has a glass chin. For instance, when Haney got buzzed by Linares, rather than boxing fans recognizing that Linares has incredible hand speed and sometimes that when you can't see the punches coming because they're coming so quick, and the fact that Haney was fighting in the pocket caused Haney to be buzzed. Everyone was just saying, oh no, Devin Haney's got a suspect chin, he's chinny. But we've seen in the Kambosos fight that he was fine, that he wasn't chinny, that he didn't get hurt at all in the fight. Obviously, he didn't get hit clean as he got hit when he fought Jorge Linares, but he still got hit on the chin every now and again. Not many times, but here and there. But he was able to take the punches quite well. Ryan Garcia against Luke Campbell surprisingly got dropped. Now, this was an area of concern for a lot of fans because Luke Campbell is just not a big puncher. He never was considered a big puncher. He was considered someone who mastered the art of boxing, moving on the outside, timing, distance, and all that stuff. So many people were surprised to see Ryan Garcia get knocked down by Luke Campbell. However, I must mention that when Garcia did suffer the knockdown, in my opinion, it was due to him having his chin up in the air, him not being sharp and having good enough concentration. Once again, poor defense, poor defensive awareness, as I've mentioned before. Being way too upright, and he didn't probably see the punch coming from that angle. Sometimes when you see a punch, even though you get hit relatively clean, you're able to take the shot just because you expected it. But when you don't see a punch coming, it shocks your system and it can affect you. So it was more of a flash knockdown. Think about if someone were to get sucker punched. If someone is to get sucker punched, they're at a much easier chance of just going down because they didn't expect it. However, if someone were to throw a punch and you seen it coming and you were able to roll with the punch slightly, it wouldn't have the same effect as if you were to be sucker punched. And I think that was the situation. Even though he wasn't sucker punched, it was a boxing fight. He just didn't see the punch coming from the angle. So I guess you could say it was equivalent to a sucker punch. But it's definitely something he's got to improve on. His defense, his defensive awareness. There's many holes in terms of Ryan Garcia's defense. But if he can just sharpen it up, work on his defense, on his upper body movement, on not just overusing the high guard, this can be an elite fighter. He's definitely someone who's got the potential. We already see he's got the athleticism, his incredible hand speed. He's very heavy-handed, and he can throw many different punches. He has a good jab, a good right hand. He has an amazing left hook. His left hook is by far his best punch. He can throw an uppercut, and once he gets into his rhythm, he really can just put it on his opponent. But there's areas for Ryan Garcia to improve. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about Ryan Garcia. Do you like him? Maybe you don't. Why not? Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, peace.